Since you guys have already jumped into working with audio samples in your projects, I'm going to have to explain a couple things about audio samples in your projects. So let's go over here. I'm going to find an audio sample of something. Let's do, type in a piano in the search bar. I'm going to click all results. So there's all these things. Whenever you see one that looks like a waveform with a little what is that little checkbox next to it? What is that? Yeah, it's a check. That is a clip of audio. It gives you a BPM, 95 BPM for this one. Oh yeah. It's about to get heavy. Come on, G. Alright, so that's 95 BPM. So the easiest way is if you know what the BPM of the sample is you want to use and you just want to pattern the whole thing around the sample exactly the way it is, go up to tempo, change it to 95. Now my entire project is at 95, and when I drag in this sample, see how it automatically lines up? The sample lands right on the, after 8 bars. It's got 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 bars, and then at the 9th bar, the sample turns off. So let's listen. Wait. I'm going to solo it. So I soloed that, and you could no longer hear me. So, but you were able to hear the sample. So you can see that there's some syncopation built into this sample. It's like, dong, 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 bong, da dong, dong. But it is in time. It fits with the click. So that's one way of doing it. But you might want to change the timing of your clip, or you might drag a clip into your project that's at a different tempo. So there's lots of things you need to know about how to work with these audio samples. So let's get started with that. Double click on the title of the sample. That opens it up down here in your clip view window, and it also gives you some details about the clip down here. You can see that the segment BPM is 95. They told us that already. It's also currently warped. Now, this is probably the most important thing to understand, and one of the most difficult things for beginning live users to understand is how in the heck does warping work? What is warping? Well, essentially what warping does is warping will, the software will find all the transients. That's all the places where the audio goes from very quiet to very loud very rapidly. Or any place where it perceives that there's a beat or a note of some kind, and it puts a little marker. I don't know if you can see it or not, but right here there is this tiny little hash mark right on this little dark gray bar, and if I mouse over it, it gives me this well, it's a marker that I could insert, but I'm not going to insert anything there right now. And there's a couple other ones right here, 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 everywhere that there's a note. They put in a warp marker, and that's very convenient. They take the place of the highest acoustic energy, essentially, and put a marker there because they think, well, this is obviously a musical event of some kind, and the user might want to do something with that musical event, so we're going to go ahead and put a warp marker there. So you can treat time from the beginning of this clip all the way to the end of this clip. You can treat time sort of elastically when something is warped. So you can pretend that the audio has been painted onto a rubber band, let's say, and you can take a pin in that rubber band. You can stick a pin through that rubber band, but then drag it to a different spot on the table and then push the pin all the way through and hold it. That's kind of how this works. So I'm going to double click here, and that puts a pin in the rubber band, and then I can stretch it. See how it starts to compress over on this side, and it starts to rarefy over on this side. It starts to stretch out on this side, and it starts to compress here. So I can push even further. Oh, look at that. I bet that sounds wacky. Boing. That's crazy. Well, let's see what those sound like when I make those changes. Here's the original. I'm just going to turn all this other crap off. And I would solo it, but then you wouldn't be able to hear me talking. Wait, I totally screwed it up already. Let me undo it. Oh, there we go. That's the beat it was supposed to be on. Okay, now let's listen. Okay, so it's got a little syncopation, so it sounds kind of cool, but I can totally whiten this thing up by taking that beat and moving it to the downbeat. Take that one, move it to the downbeat. Take this one, move it to beat 4. Take this one, move it to beat 3. Move this one to the downbeat. So now we've got this. So I've put pins in each of these spots where there's a musical event happening, and I've stretched it and pulled it around to change the timing of the clip. The tempo of the piece is the same. Tempo has not changed, but I have altered the spot in the measures where the musical events occur. So that's one use of warping. You might have to do this to make your clip fit the timing of the piece that you're working on, because you might pull in a sample that is not in the same timing, it's not the same tempo as the piece that you're working in, so you might have to stretch it to make it fit. So let me undo these. And yeah, so here's the other thing about warping. You can turn warping off and see all the grid lines go away. Now the piece is going to play at the same tempo regardless of what tempo the song is at. Watch. So the sample is still playing at the same time. In fact, if you ignore this tempo, the metronome for a moment. You can see that unwarping the clip unlocks the clip from the tempo of the song, the global tempo of the set, rather. So if I were to slow this way down, go the other direction, super, super slow. So you can see the clip is still playing at its original tempo. I'm going to set this back to 95. I'm going to rewarp this joker, and it's going to say, do you want to keep the clip's current timing? So what it's asking me is, do you want to lock the clip at its previous timing, or do you want to leave it unwarped, or do you want to lock to the new timing? And they're both at 95, so I'm going to go ahead and lock to the new timing. It refines the transient points here, and it now works just as it did before. But because it's warped, now this happens if I change the tempo. Now because it's warped, they are locked into each other. I'm going to change the tempo. See how now the tempo of the clip has changed? Oh, that's going to take forever. Back to 95. original tempo. Okay, so what happens if you pull a sample in that you want to use, but it's not at the tempo of the piece that you're trying to play in? So I'm going to stay in 95 for a moment. I'm going to delete this sample. I'm going to find a different sample that is in a different tempo. Let's see. There we go. Well, let me find one that actually says what tempo it is. Okay, that one's at 92. Okay, let's do this. Drag that in. So what this attempted to do was move the tempo of the clip to fit the piece that I'm working on, but if I unwarp this, you can see what the original file looked like, and this is the original tempo now. See how it no longer syncs up? If I move this up to the tempo that the clip is at, they will fit. But we don't want to make our song's not at 120. Our song is at 95. So I'm going to put it back at 95. And I'm going to pretend that this clip did not automatically try to warp its way in. So let's warp it and see. Okay. Now it's still off time. So here's a couple things you can do. You can put a warp marker at the end of the piece or at the end of the clip, and you can stretch it. Let's see, I think this clip is supposed to go one and. One and two and three and four and. Okay, it's on the and right after. Okay, so that works. I could also take these and put them wherever I want by pinning each one separately. And the other thing you can do is actually move the clip around in the song until you find, like if you've brought something in that has a clear downbeat and you're not sure of the timing, what you can do is move it so that this transient here, the first transient, lines up on downbeat of a measure. Then mask it to that measure. And then you can unwarp it and then just move the tempo up and down until you find the tempo. So like I usually use this when I'm bringing in a song, like if I've dumped a song in and I'm trying to figure out what the tempo of that song is, this is what I'll usually do. I'll unwarp it so it plays at its original tempo, and then I'll actually drag the tempo slider around until the song matches up, meaning I'm seeing all of the beats in the song matching up with the measure grid lines. So let me see. There, so that's there, that's there, that's on the next measure, that's on the next measure, that's on the next measure, and that all happened at 120. So of course I already knew that this one was 120, but I was talking about, you know, if you bring in music from outside and you don't know what tempo it is, that's one way to discover the tempo, is unwarp it and then move the slider up and down until everything matches up on the grid lines. So anyway, that's one way to work with samples. You can also chop them up. If you click in the sample and hit Command E, you can chop it, and once you chop it, you can sort of move that piece around, separately, independently. So you can kind of put these wherever you want. And then once you have it the way you want it, I don't know whether this is the way you want it or not, but if that was the way you wanted it and you wanted to put them all back together with the new spacing that you created, you can select them all and hit Command J for join, and it creates a new Okay, so what I just did as an example was not particularly musical, but it was just to show how you can chop things up and make new files out of it, and so on and so forth. So anyway, I hope that helps clarify how to use the samples that you are using. If the sample you have already has a BPM and you want to work at the BPM the original sample is, then just change your global to that BPM before you import the sample, and then go from there. You can build the song around it.